Alright, ladies and gentlemen, so it is now time to start our color plan. Now that we've got our final drawn out, it's time to decide our colors. And just like deciding anything else, we want to have as many options as possible and get an idea to change and have the ability to change our minds. So we do a color plan on our rough drafts so that we don't mess up our final draft. So this way you can change your mind, you can play around with some colors, you can figure out what it is you like. Now this time around, because of the way we did our project, there are two parts to our color plan. There is the stuff that is inside your head that's going to have one set of color rules, and then there is your background, which has another set of color rules. Now I'm going to go over both sets of color rules, and then we'll go over how to color each one. So, for your head, all the colors that are used inside your head need to be balanced. And then your background needs to have contrast. Now the reason I'm talking about both of these at once is what you may want to do as you're deciding on the color of your heads is think about that contrast color for your background. Now what happened with mine, if I can flip to it, if you notice, I did not do a good enough color plan because if you notice, my background doesn't really contrast too much. The blues are too similar. And so what happens, especially right here around this blue here, is that it tends to blend into the background, and that face doesn't really stand out as much as it should. So, when you are picking your background color, you need to pick something that is completely different. So maybe you do all the colors inside your head light and your background is dark. Maybe you do all the colors inside your head warm, like reds and yellows and oranges, and you do your background cool. Any kind of, but you've got to make sure that they severely contrast, because otherwise that background pattern is going to take over, especially if you've got one that repeats like mine, is going to take over that drawing, and you're not really going to see the head as much. And we want the head to stand out. We want it to have emphasis. So I think this time around, I'm going to do the colors inside my head very cool, and I'm going to do my background colors warm. So I'm going to start with my head while I'm still thinking about this background. So doing your head, all the colors inside your head need to balance. And what this means is that if I choose to use blue, let's say in the word video games, now remember, this is just a color plan, so it does not need to be colored neatly, as long as you can tell what colors things are. So if I've used blue up here, that means I've got to use blue somewhere down here. So maybe let's see, I could make the camera down here blue, and maybe I want to use blue over here a little bit to get that detail, because I'm going to have to do a bunch of colors here. So once I've used it a couple times, I can put that marker away. That's the easiest way to do this, is to take that same marker and use it in several different places before you put it away. So if I take this, one of these is purple, maybe some of the books are purple. And then maybe the word cooking is purple. So my colors are balanced. It's being used in several different places before I put that marker away. Let's see. Ooh, let's use this one. So maybe I use this dark blue as, well, I do that in the palette, and then maybe I do it as the needle and thread is dark blue. And maybe the lens in the camera is dark blue, and maybe a couple of those books are dark blue. So see how I'm figuring out all the details. Your color plan's kind of going to look a little spotty as you're starting. And then I do art. So you get the drift, so I have to use it up here. Maybe I use it as these. Maybe I use a couple of the buttons in the video game controller. Maybe I make these guys, the pie plates, blue, so that I'm using it all throughout. Now maybe I use this kind of purpley red as the apples down here. And I use it in the palette, and I use it in some of the books. and I use it as my video game controller. Now the other thing to think about, if you're going to use white in your background, you don't want to have a whole lot of white space left in your piece. So what you may want to do is have have the background around that big symbol be green, and then maybe there's a detail over here that's green, and maybe the D-pad over here is green. So see, I'm picking all my colors. So I want to make sure that none of these background spaces are left white. So maybe that's green. Maybe the space behind these books is green. Maybe there's not much left down there. So let's leave that. Let's go, where else is another cool color? Let's do true blue. Maybe I do back here, blue. I do the word photography blue. Maybe, actually, I think I want to do this back here blue, but I think I've changed my mind about this. So, if you change your mind about a color, like I decided that I want to use brown because I want my palette to be brown, and I'm running out of space, but these bookshelves make more sense being brown. So I'm going to go right over them. I'm going to make myself a little arrow and say that's supposed to be brown. But that means I do have enough, maybe. So then I go back and I say, well, I need to use that teal somewhere else. So instead of this background being that blue, I'm going to make that background this teal. So this kind of stuff is fine for this one. Now, if you mixed and matched, if you finished you liked the art that was over here and this was the one you put in your final, you can do that too. In my first version, you can see, if I can get it out, you can see I kind of mixed and matched and figured out where they were coming from. So like these two, I switched the two sewing because I liked this sewing idea better. I switched these two, and that was fine. So you only need to color the spaces of what you drew on your final. So then once I've got all that, and those are all cool colors, now I turn back to my rough draft, my thumbnail sketch, and I figure that, okay, if that's all there, maybe my background is going to be, because that's a lot of blues, maybe I'll do it orange. And I've got all this space. You don't have to fill it all, but maybe I decide, I don't really like that orange. Maybe I want to try this orange. That one's, I'm not really a big fan of that either. So this is your chance to try it out and kind of figure it out. Maybe if I do this one, and then I fill in the spaces. I kind of like that, where I fill in the spaces or I kind of outline it. So this is your chance to try it out. Figure out what's that background going to look like. And kind of have it sitting next side by side if you can. If you can't, if you've glued in both papers, that's okay. You can just kind of flip back and forth. You can even take some of those main colors that you used and kind of scribble in here. It doesn't have to be neat, but where you can kind of see, okay, if it's blues and greens and purples, what's that background going to look with it? Okay, so once you have figured out your contrasting background, your balanced objects, you are done your color plan, and then you get to move on to coloring your final. Make sure your color plan has gotten checked by Ms. Chesser before you move on to coloring your final. Once you've started coloring your final, there is nothing else you can fix. You are stuck with the idea that you kind of went with. All right? So, get started on your color plan.